afternoon, good evening, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the GirlUp podcast. Now, GirlUp is a United Nations foundation based on empowering both genders to reach their full potential. So join us as we take baby steps for a better future. Now, in this podcast, we'll be discussing and diving deep into various topics like women in STEM, the media representation of women in STEM, but also feminism in areas like pop culture. But we'll also be diving deep into misconceptions around feminism because a lot of people don't even know what feminism means. We'll also be going into body positivity and women in politics.
Today we're joined by a very, very special guest, Miss Heather Scott, who also has some amazing stories and is really inspirational to me and many other students around the school. So would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, girls. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. This is an absolutely amazing initiative. I cannot believe how inspiring everybody in this room is. And it's just so lovely to see you just take such an important issue and put it out there into the world and really give it the kind of focus that it deserves. So well done, everybody. Honestly, I'm so proud of you all. Thank you. My name's Miss Scott. I've been working at GEMS Metropole for 3 years. I started in 2001. And I came in as a head of year. And since then, I've followed my year group since year 8. Sorry, I need to make sure that I'm sitting here. I followed my year group since year 8. I've seen them grow and I've watched them develop, and it's just been an amazing experience. Here I am.
So what does a day in your life look like?
Okay, so for me, I would say that being a teacher is a very complicated and special job.
And the head of year.
And the head of year. I mean, I always say you have to be a very special person to be a teacher because you have to have the patience of a very, very patient person. And you have to have such a big skill set because not only do you need to be a specialist in your subject and have that knowledge to be able to educate other students, but you also have to be a kind of maternal figure, and then you also have to be a counsellor and a listener. You have to be almost like a kind of guidance counsellor. So there are lots of different roles that are involved with teaching. And on top of all of that, you need to know how to interact and communicate with kids and with students because that's a whole other different skill. So yeah, I'm a teacher. I find that very complicated sometimes, but it's the best job in the whole entire world and I would never change it. And then on top of that, I'm also the head of year. So that's overlooking a whole year group, and that comes more into pastoral elements. So thinking about attendance, behaviour, well-being, making sure that students have high standards. So it's tough, especially because I want to focus on more important, but more positive things, such as these podcasts and celebrations and achievements. But obviously 50% of the role is also dealing with behaviour and uniform. So I think it's important to have a balance and to know when to hold on to things and when to let go of things and to just build those relationships with students. But yeah, a day in my life is hectic, is what I'm going to say.
So what are your success stories?
My success stories, I think for me, being a teacher is one of obviously my most successful stories. I mean, I've always known, my history teacher in school said to me at my prom, "You are the first student I've ever heard say to me, when I'm older, I'm going to be a teacher." So I was always inspired by my teachers and I was always inspired by education. And I knew that for me, I wanted to go to university. I was the first person in my family to go to university, so that was a success. I completed my 3 years at university. It was tough, and then by the end of the 3 years, it was a huge adjustment for me. I think just going into university and having all of that kind of expectation and independence, which I hadn't really had before. So that was a success for me. Then going on to do my teacher training, that was another huge challenge for me. Then going on to working in my first school, I remember the first classroom that I was put into, and I was quivering by the door like this because I don't want to go in. So all of these are successes for me and personal goals that I've achieved. So yeah, in terms of my career, that's my success story.
That was really, really inspirational to hear. And Miss Scott is actually the first ever speaker we have. As she said, she has a lot of work, a lot of problems to deal with in terms of students, but to us, she's always down for all initiatives, any activity. She's the first person we reach out to. So we're really grateful for that. And we actually did not know that she was the first person in her family to go to university. So that's so incredible to hear. Now, through all of this, because obviously teaching was a really long, it would take you a really long time to get to the point where you are now. What do you think was your why, and like what kept pushing you throughout that?
I think for me, there are multiple things that go into my why, but a huge part of it, when I boil it all down, for me is respect. And I think for me, ever since a young age, I just wanted to be respected. And then growing up, obviously, you have the usual school ground, banter, and, I had a really good group of friends, but I was always known as like, not the stupid one, but as like the ditzy one, or the one that didn't really know what she was doing, or was unsure of herself. I had such low confidence when I was in school. And I knew I was switched on, and I knew everything that was happening around me, but I just wasn't confident enough to comment or say anything. So I knew that for me, I just wanted to have respect, which, growing up and going into different environments, it's taken me a very long time to build respect and to, earn that respect. Respect is earned, and you do have to prove yourself. But I think there are lots of different barriers that, especially for a woman, you face going into different environments and being, respected straight away. I also don't have that kind of aura of authority. I don't think I do anyway. So that's taken me a lot of time to build up. So for me, growing up, I just wanted to have that respect. I'm also the oldest, so I've got two younger sisters back at home in the UK. So I knew that I had to obviously, step up and show them that they can also be successful. So I do it for them, and I also do it for me.
No, that's amazing. And as it's really famously known, respect is like a two-way stream. So you yourself, to us, to students, to teachers, to staff, you're a really respectful person. So it obviously makes sense for you to get everything that you're getting, and you truly deserve it.
That's really true. And did you ever think that you would reach this point? Like you said that you grew up with a tough background, people thinking that you're not exactly the confident type. So did you ever think in your mind that one day I'll reach this position of head of year at such an amazing school?
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I never in a million years thought that I would be A, a head of year, or B, in Dubai, being a head of year. I mean, this is, a dream for me come true. And if you asked me 5 years ago what I would be doing, I would have said to you, working in my local school and, just, plodding along and getting on. And, something switched in me where I was just like, no, I want to be ambitious. I want to earn that next level of respect. I think COVID was a big kind of thing for me, where I was just sitting there and thinking, I really need to do something with myself. I want to make sure that I am successful and that I leave my mark here. And I think when you get to a certain age, you start feeling that way anyway. You're over the youth, and you're over the making mistakes, and you think, okay, now's the time to grow up. Now's the time to actually make a name for yourself. So yeah, that's kind of why I'm shocked at myself. Here I am.
Yeah, and you should be really proud of yourself for that too. Now, you grew up in Southeast England, right? So do you believe that the rights, opportunities that women had there, and also the respect that they had there, how does it compare to here in the Middle East?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, because I've actually faced myself issues with coming from the southeast of England. Now, the southeast of England, in the UK, there are certain different levels of, every area has its reputation. And you have kind of like pronounced English, and you have estuary English, which is where people live around the River Thames and they speak a certain way. Now, in the southeast of England, we very much have that kind of reputation, which is the estuary English. And there are certain things that have happened in the media and certain programmes back in the UK that have ended up giving a stereotype to that accent. Now, when I was younger, my accent was a lot stronger. So I think when you have this southeast, imagine any kind of southeast London accent, and we really kind of drag our vowels and you're right, like that kind of dragging of the words. And when I first started going into university, I remember people specifically saying to me, "Oh, you're from the southeast of England, I can tell." And that straight away, I was like, oh, okay, obviously, and it wasn't a judgment, but it was almost like they were laughing. And not laughing, but just saying, oh, I can tell you're from the southeast of England. And it was those kind of judgmental comments that I first started picking up on. And then I progressed, obviously, into my career, and I started going into different professional environments and, really kind of important meetings with different people from different backgrounds. I realised very quickly that your accent is an important thing, and you need to appear in a very formal manner and tone. So I'd say the opportunities in the southeast of England are the same as anywhere else in the UK. However, there are definitely a lot of stereotypes and a lot of judgment and almost a little bit of prejudice when it comes to people that come from the southeast of England and thinking that perhaps they are less intelligent or perhaps not as switched on as people from different areas. That answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And it really raises this subject of stereotypes against like different genders, different races, and different like backgrounds. That's why our next question is: how has being a woman affected your journey in leadership and your job?
Yeah.
How has that affected it?
Yeah, I have definitely felt so frustrated so many times throughout my career, and I think especially as I've progressed higher within teaching, obviously teaching is a very predominantly female industry, and I think it's changing now. And actually, this is the first time that I've seen so many male teachers, which is brilliant, and it's definitely what the sector needs. But I think there's definitely this preconception, first of all, that teaching is a girl's job, and that it's something that women naturally go into, and we can talk about the reasons why about that later. But especially for me, coming into leadership and going into the head of year role, especially back in the UK, I had to fight. And I had to really prove myself because I was up against other men that were going for the same role. And, there are stereotypes again and judgments again on who's more fit for the role. Do the students need a masculine presence, and do they need to have somebody who has this authoritative tone? And obviously I'm a lot more confident in myself now. But 6 years ago, when I first became a head of year, I was very, not timid, but I needed to build my authority. I needed to build my presence. So I had to prove myself because I was going against men who naturally were seen to have authority and naturally were seen to have that presence. And again, I'm blanketing and I'm saying, this is all men. It's not all men, of course. Not every man has this kind of stiff, kind of austere presence. But definitely from my experience, that's what I've faced. And I had to really kind of prove to people that I could be this very strong presence and somebody that is firm but fair. And actually, I think in the end, it has worked in my favour because you do need to have somebody who isn't always very upfront and confrontational and abrasive. You need somebody who has that balance and can sometimes take a step back and have more of a maternal focus. So yeah, I have faced some issues, especially in meetings when I want to perhaps have my say, and sometimes that's not listened to as much as perhaps a male opinion. But it's never been a big issue where I've totally felt that I have been discriminated against. I think I can always, have a meeting and say, I really felt disrespected there, and it will be taken seriously. But yeah, it's definitely still present, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that even though teaching is known to be a predominantly, feminine career, teaching leadership in the sector of education is not, I think it's pretty mixed. It's like 50-50. And I think that because they're sort of like have to diversify, men might be given more of like a priority when it comes to leadership. Now, this leads nicely on to the next question, which is, you live in the UAE, you live alone, you have to manage your life, your family life, your work life, and also your finances. So how do you deal with that?
It's been a journey. In my head, when I first decided to come to Dubai, I was like, yeah, it's brilliant. I'm just going to start in the UAE and everything's going to be easy and I'm going to have all of this benefit. And, that was the main attraction, especially if you are interested ever in going into teaching. Teaching will take you around the world, and there are so many packages out there that will support you in that journey. But a lot of it comes from your own personal skills, and also, how you manage your own finances, how you manage your own, ways of working. So when I first came here, it's obviously for everybody, it's a culture shock. And you have to get used to the ways of the place that you've moved to. But on top of that, I think I didn't actually understand the differences in currency and the differences in prices. I worked and lived in London, so I did understand that. When you're used to a certain, for example, I know that in the UK, I can get a loaf of bread for £1, I can get a pint of milk for £1, and I can get, various items for certain maximum prices. I wouldn't pay over a certain price for anything. Here, completely different kettle of fish. You can go from one shop and a pint of milk is one price, and go to another shop and a pint of milk is a different price. So I think a lot of the adjusting was getting used to the economy here and kind of the ways that things are manufactured and the way that you can go out and get products. I spent a lot of money in my first year. I'm not ashamed to admit that, because I'm now a much more educated person in UAE products. And yeah, obviously the loneliness is another thing, because back in the UK you have your support network, and I've got a group of friends that I've been friends with since school, and we would always be together. It would be weird if we didn't have plans for the weekend. And even if we didn't, I'd end up around one of their houses, or I'd be in a looking after one of their dogs or something like that. So coming here and then going from that kind of used to environment to then having nothing. That was a huge adjustment, but it's actually grown me as a person, and I'm so much more confident now to be on my own. And again, I think that's a big thing, just to be totally 100% on your own and be happy in your own shoes and be happy sitting indoors on your own. That's a big thing. That's a life lesson that a lot of people need to learn. And once you've done that, and once you're happy to be on your own, you are the best version of yourself. So yeah, it's been a journey. I've gone through a lot of different emotions, but I've come out on the other side.
It does help. And since this podcast is all about Girl Up, we want to ask you this one question. What is feminism to you?
Now, this is an interesting question, because I have this conversation with students all of the time, and especially the male students, and they say, "Oh, Miss, why do we focus on feminism? Why is there nothing for the boys?" And the idea for me is that it's not competing. We're not competing with males. We're not competing with boys. We just want to have or be on the same page. I want to be looked at and respected in the same way as a male would. I don't want to have the stereotype of, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, just because I look or appear or speak in a different way. I think men shy away from that idea, and they don't have the same judgments thrust upon them. So until we get to a point where it's equal in terms of society's judgments on what's expected of women and of men, that to me is feminism. That to me is standing up for yourself and not having to say to someone, oh, I just think it's a bit unfair that I was treated this way and this person wasn't. That should be totally eradicated, and then we will achieve feminism one day. I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that, because feminism, I think it's a different thing to everyone, and it sort of like encompasses their own experiences, their own life story and everything. So as a teacher, how do you foster a sense of sisterhood and solidarity amongst the female students to ensure that they're all, there's no negative impact on their well-being and on their academic success?
It's a huge thing. Girls are the meanest. They can be so horrible to each other, and it's so disappointing, because I've had this conversation with my year group, I think about 3 times. Once a year, I think I've had to have this conversation with the year group. And keep them back and after assembly, and just give them a talk and say, girls, what is going on? We're meant to be looking after each other. We're meant to be supporting each other. The world is tough for girls. And, obviously we're in a bubble here in school, and, girls here have their say and girls here are respected. But it's not like that around the world. And, you are going to get into situations where you are dismissed, and you might fly to a different country and go on holiday and have some horrible behaviours given to you because of where you are. So we are in this kind of protected bubble here, and I think that makes girls compete, which is something that I totally disagree with. We should never compete with each other. We should always be happy for each other, support each other, empower each other. I'm not jealous if one of my female colleagues does something amazing and gets this brilliant, either a pay rise, or they get a new role, or they get praised for something. I'm genuinely happy for them. Like, oh, well done, this is amazing. But I just don't understand where the competition comes from, and the nastiness, especially in growing up. It's natural to all teenagers. All teenagers at some point will feel that competitiveness, but with the girls in particular, it can get very nasty. So I've had to keep the year group behind multiple times and speak to them and just say, right, let's stop. Let's all take a break. Let's leave our egos at the door, and let's all hug each other. And I genuinely say to them, everybody needs to hug. And I think the power of that is immense, because when you actually stop and think, okay, maybe I should think about my behaviour. We're all in these fast-paced bubbles and we're all in these fast-paced lives, and it's very quick to want to defend yourself and, oh, this person has messaged me on Instagram and I don't agree with what they say, so I'm going to go and tell these other girls what they've said. And, it's all of this kind of fast-pacedness, and nobody actually just stops and thinks, maybe I should think about my actions before I actually do them. So I hope that's had an impact on the year group. I think the girls in year 10 especially are really loving towards each other. Obviously, we do have different scenarios and we do have different, individual cases, but in general, they've really pulled together and I can feel it, and I hope they do too.
I think that was really lovely to hear, first of all. As everyone listening, I really do hope you really take this advice to heart, because maybe take a notebook and start writing, because I'm graduating next year. I'm in year 12, and I really wish that 2 years ago in year 10 I had someone like Miss Scott as a role model, so I could, instead of facing the issues myself, I'd know how to sort of like combat them and how to progress further. So really do take this podcast, write down the notes, use it, and we're really inspired by that.
I mean, that's why we're here, Eeman. We're here to help every girl. Miss Scott is my head of year, so I can contribute to this. She has told us to stay back and hug each other, and it's really helpful because we once again just come together as sisterhood, as girls all together. We just say hey, we're girls in the same world. Let's just be there for each other. So it's a really good idea to keep girls behind and hug each other. We should all do that. All year should be doing that.
If there's someone with you right now, just go and give them a hug.
Exactly. So how can education contribute to empowering women and fostering feminist perspectives?
Yeah, I mean, for me, education has been that gateway, and I will always thank the education system and teaching careers, because before I came into the education sector, I was so ignorant, and I didn't understand the different protections that girls have and the different ways of, looking after yourself and making sure that you have the tools and the knowledge to actually, look after yourself. So for me, teaching is a very good way to be educated in terms of education is always the key. Whenever we need any kind of conflict resolution, it's all about education. What can we learn from this situation? But in terms of using my teaching, especially because I'm an English teacher, it works hand in hand. I teach some quite tough texts, such as The Mockingbird and Inspector Calls, where the issues in those stories, there are a lot of feminist issues, and there are a lot of, girls that are abused and girls that are mistreated. So having those conversations in the classroom and talking to the students, what is wrong with this situation? Sorry, excuse me. What is happening here that, why is this author exposing this point? And then opening up that discussion and having those conversations. For me, that's really important. Sorry, guys, I've just got a bit of a frog in my throat. There we go. So I think education is the most important thing, and it's so important that students go to school and are part of those conversations and part of those discussions. And everybody always says, all of your teachers will say to you, my subject's the most important subject, you need to make sure that you're listening. But I honestly, truly believe from the bottom of my heart that English is a specialist subject, and you really, really do need to go to those lessons, because you don't just learn how to write an essay or how to pass an exam. You learn morals and you learn values, and it's all through the power of literature. And that's why, for me, literature is so important. Everybody should read, and everybody should make sure that they are reading outside of their comfort zone, so they understand different worlds and different viewpoints. So in terms of feminism, there's so much feminist literature out there. I actually teach A-level at the moment. They're looking at the feminist lens and the issues and where it all started. It actually started around the 60s, 50s and 60s, where people were actually noticing, in terms of literature, that there are certain boundaries and certain stereotypes that are common throughout different stories within literature. To answer your question, I think teaching is so important and influential, and education is so important and influential, especially with empowering girls. If girls didn't go to school and if girls didn't actually get that education, they wouldn't have the tools, they wouldn't have the knowledge to protect themselves and to educate themselves. So I hope that answers what you're asking me.
Yeah.
I like to go on a tangent, sorry.
I think that answers a lot of other questions that we were planning on asking as well. Now, as one of the final questions, what initiatives do you have in school and in place for supporting female students in their academics and their extracurriculars?
Well, first of all, the GirlUp movement. I mean, how amazing is this? This is unreal, and it's such a brilliant step forward. In terms of school-wide initiatives, we hope that we foster this ethos of women are respected and girls are respected, and there is no disparity between kind of how girls are treated and how boys are treated. Everybody is treated the same. That's embedded in our school policy. It's embedded in kind of our culture here. And just, again, in terms of lessons, as I just mentioned with my A-level students, we have a specific topic on feminism. The text that we study in English, especially with To Kill a Mockingbird and with An Inspector Calls, those are chosen because of the issues of feminism and, of course, other issues. But we have lessons that specifically target feminism and why it's important that we have those discussions. We have PSHE days, which run once every year, and we have to tailor them to the year groups, but we have had different years where a guest speaker has come in and spoken to the girls about different issues, especially social media. We had a lovely female influencer that came in and just spoke to girls about body positivity and not taking social media too seriously, switching off your phone. It's not the world. Social media is not real. So I hope with all of those different things, we are empowering and inspiring girls to know that they are important, that girl issues are important, that we understand all of the issues that girls face, and that they matter.
Okay, that's an amazing answer from Miss Scott. Again, like, you're really an inspiration to all of us. It's really amazing that we've got you here on the show to be our first speaker. It's just been amazing. We've loved the answers you've given us.
Now to end off, one question. If you were to give a really short message to women getting into leadership, what's your top advice?
Know your topic. Okay, so I think a big thing, and I've spoken about this a lot, but a big thing is respect. So when you walk into a room, you need to earn that respect, and you need to know what you're talking about, and you need to be educated and be very assured of yourself. I remember when I first did an interview for the head of year years and years ago, I was up until 3 a.m. and I was researching pastoral and behaviours in children and looking at all different ways that we can improve attendance. And, you are so blessed that you have the internet, because when I was at school, we hardly had the internet at all. And again, I was so bewildered. I didn't know about this big world and I was very ignorant. But in terms of advice for girls, know your topic and know what you need to know and be assured of yourself and do the research and put the work in, because we do have to fight.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
We're grateful for having Miss Scott here. We're grateful for having Eeman here. So this was our first episode, and we hope you guys enjoyed. Miss Scott, we hope you were happy to be here.
We'll have a lot more episodes coming really soon, so it was a great way to start off. So thank you so much, Miss Scott. Once again.
Thank you guys. This is amazing. Keep it going, please, forever. It's amazing. Well done, everybody.